Hi, automotive enthusiasts. Welcome to Cam and Crank, where today we dive into one of the most celebrated machines ever to bridge the gap between road and race, the 1987 BMW E30 M3. This car isn't just another chapter in the history of performance vehicles. It's the moment when a rulebook obligation transformed into a legend that still commands respect nearly 4 decades later. You've seen the name plastered across auction listings, heard the whispers of its stratospheric values, maybe even caught a glimpse of one on the road, and wondered why enthusiasts treat it with almost religious reverence. That's exactly what we're here to unpack. By the end of this journey, you'll understand not only what the E30 M3 was, but why it mattered so profoundly to motorsport, to BMW's identity, and to the entire culture of performance cars. Back in the 1980s, touring car racing wasn't about raw spectacle alone. It was about rules, balance, and a unique challenge. Manufacturers had to build a minimum number of street cars that mirrored the race versions. For BMW, that meant turning a boxy compact sedan into a machine that could take on the world's most competitive grids. At first glance, the task seemed like bureaucracy in metal form. But what emerged from Munich's workshops was a revelation. That took the bones of the everyday 3 Series and re-sculpted them into something sharper, lighter, and more purposeful. With wide fenders, aerodynamic tweaks, and a screaming 4-cylinder engine, the E30 M3 looked unassuming until you saw it attack corners with a poise that humbled bigger, more powerful rivals. The story of the E30 M3 is not a simple one-off of engineering success. It's a tale of persistence, clever compromise, and a clear vision of what racing required. This car went from an experiment in homologation to the winningest touring car in history, racking up trophies across DTM, BTCC, and even the World Touring Car Championship. It didn't just succeed. It rewrote what people thought was possible when a manufacturer committed fully to the demands of motorsport. That transformation, from a compliance exercise into a cultural icon, is the core of our story today. Over the next hour, we'll trace 3 intertwined arcs. First, the birth of the M3 and the meticulous choices that shaped its DNA. Then, the years of competition, where it cemented its dominance and forced rivals to rethink their strategies. Finally, the long shadow it casts today, from its skyrocketing collector value to the way it influenced every M3 that followed and every performance car chasing its balance of usability and precision. By the time we're done, you won't just know the E30 M3, you'll feel why it continues to inspire generations of automotive enthusiasts. So settle in, because this is more than a history lesson. It's the unfolding of a motorsport legend that still sets the benchmark. When BMW set out to homologate the E30 M3, the company knew the challenge went far beyond bolting on spoilers or tweaking engines. The goal was to create something that could live on public roads, yet dominate on race circuits under the tight restrictions of Group A. That required a blend of engineering foresight and bold decision-making, and it resulted in one of the most purposeful transformations in automotive history. Microstory. The E30 Series began life as a competent, modest sedan with no grand aspirations for motorsport glory. Engineers saw the opportunity to adapt its basic structure, but they also recognized the compromises. It was heavy in the wrong places, shaped more for family commutes than aerodynamic efficiency, and lacking the raw aggression of rivals from Ford or Mercedes. Instead of starting from scratch, BMW decided to re-sculpt the existing platform, widening fenders for stability, revising the suspension for agility, and redesigning body panels purely for aerodynamic gain. This bold reimagining set the foundation for something extraordinary. Context Digest. In the mid-1980s, Group A racing dictated that manufacturers must produce at least 5,000 road-going units that mirrored their race cars. This wasn't just about compliance, it was a way to ensure that racing machines had some real-world DNA. For BMW, it meant gambling on building a car that would appeal to enthusiasts while still serving its real mission, crushing the opposition, on track. Microstory. The heart of the E30 M3 was the S14 engine, a high-revving 4-cylinder derived from BMW's 6-cylinder M1 power plant. At just 2.3 liters, it seemed modest compared to competitors, but it was designed to thrive at high revs, with a character that begged to be pushed to the limit. This wasn't an accident. It was deliberate engineering, aimed at extracting every ounce of performance within the rules. That engine, paired with a featherweight chassis, gave the car its legendary balance. Reflection bridge. The brilliance of the E30 M3 wasn't just in its power or looks. It was in how every piece worked together to create something greater than the sum of its parts. Micro-story. At first, the public response was cautious. Buyers weren't sure what to make of a 3 Series with flared arches and a 4-cylinder engine when BMW was known for smooth inline 6s. Yet word began to spread. Enthusiasts realized the E30 M3 wasn't about raw horsepower, it was about control, about slicing through corners with precision unmatched by its peers. Slowly, the reputation grew, fueled by magazine reviews and the whispers of early adopters who knew they had found something special. Context digest. Motorsport insiders understood that the true test would come not on showroom floors, but on racetracks. The E30 M3 was entering a world dominated by powerful Ford Sierras and capable Mercedes 190Es. The stakes were high. If BMW's gamble failed, it risked not only embarrassment, but also millions invested in homologation. Success, however, could redefine the brand's sporting image for decades. Micro-story. When the M3 first appeared in the Deutsche Tourenwagen Meisterschaft, or DTM, it quickly proved its mettle. Against bigger, more powerful competition, the M3's agility and reliability began stacking up results. Drivers praised its balance, noting how forgiving it was at the limit and how well it responded to aggressive driving. The car didn't just compete, it started winning, and those victories began shaping its myth. Reflection bridge. What began as a project to meet bureaucratic regulations was already starting to look like the makings of a racing dynasty. Context digest. By 1987, the E30 M3 was not only holding its own, but racking up titles. Its dominance in touring car racing was becoming undeniable, and manufacturers who had dismissed it as an underpowered curiosity were suddenly forced to rethink their strategies. BMW had discovered a formula that worked, and the M3 was proving unstoppable. Micro-story. Beyond Germany, the M3 was making waves internationally. In the British Touring Car Championship, it challenged seasoned rivals. In the World Touring Car Championship, it achieved success on tracks as varied as Monza and Spa. Each victory added another brick to the wall of its legend, showing that this wasn't a regional phenomenon, but a global force. Fans began to recognize the M3 as the ultimate driver's weapon, and its cult status grew. The rising tide of victories was transforming the E30 M3 from an engineering project into a cultural icon, setting up the stage for its true dominance and the far-reaching consequences it would have across racing and automotive culture alike. As the victories piled up, the E30 M3 moved from promising newcomer to undisputed champion, and that success reshaped the landscape of touring car racing in profound ways. BMW had not just built a car that could win, they had created a template that others struggled to match. With each passing season, the pressure on rivals mounted, and the stakes for BMW grew higher. Could they sustain dominance, or would the competition catch up? Micro-story. One of the pivotal battlegrounds was the DTM series, where year after year the M3 returned stronger. Teams learned to exploit every nuance of the chassis, every ounce of power from the S14 engine, and every trick and setup to squeeze out performance. Rivals arrived with turbocharged monsters, chasing horsepower as the magic bullet, but BMW's balance and consistency carried the day. It wasn't uncommon to see M3s finishing at the top of the podium multiple times in a season, creating an aura of inevitability that frustrated opponents. Context digest. DTM was fiercely competitive, filled with national pride and manufacturer backing. To dominate, there wasn't just about trophies, it was about brand identity and international reputation. For BMW, the E30 M3's repeated success in this arena made the car synonymous with precision and victory. For rivals, it meant pouring money into new development, often with diminishing returns. Micro story. One season in particular stands out, the 1987 World Touring Car Championship. Against an international field of heavy hitters, the M3 proved it wasn't just a domestic hero. It won races across continents, carving its name into the global stage. These victories weren't just about lap times. They sent a message that BMW's approach, lightweight, balanced, meticulously engineered, was a winning formula everywhere. The WTCC title gave the M3 a permanent place in motorsport history. Reflection bridge. Each win cemented the M3's status not just as a racing machine but as a cultural touchstone that represented something bigger than raw speed. Micro story. The road-going versions were also evolving. Special. Additions like the Sport Evolution and Staccato offered more power, sharper aerodynamics, and track-bred details. These models weren't simply marketing exercises, they were rolling celebrations of the M3's dominance, homologation specials. They kept BMW competitive while giving enthusiasts a piece of the legend. Owning one was like holding a trophy in your driveway, proof that you belonged to the same lineage as the champions. Context digest. As the M3 became unstoppable, its reputation influenced how other manufacturers approached homologation. No longer was it enough to build a car just to satisfy regulations. Rivals realized they needed to create machines that could stand as icons in their own right, blending racecraft with desirability. The E30 M3 had raised the bar for the entire industry. Micro story. The M3's dominance wasn't just measured in wins, it was measured in the way it inspired drivers. Amateur racers and club-level enthusiasts flocked to the car, knowing it could deliver thrills without punishing mistakes. Professional drivers praised its predictability, calling it a partner rather than a weapon. This relationship between driver and machine helped cement its reputation as one of the most rewarding cars ever built. Reflection bridge. What had started as a regulatory necessity had become the yardstick for touring car performance and an aspirational symbol for enthusiasts around the world. Context digest. By the early 1990s, the E30 M3's reign was coming to a natural end. Rules were changing, competitors were evolving, and BMW itself was preparing to move on with the next generation. Yet the legend was already etched in stone. The E30 M3 had become the most successful touring car of all time, a record that still stands today. Micro story. As it retired from frontline racing, the car's legend didn't fade. Instead, nostalgia and respect grew. Former rivals spoke of its dominance with grudging admiration, and fans who had watched it in its heyday carried the stories forward. In garages, workshops, and private collections, E30 M3s became revered artifacts, each one carrying the spirit of an era when racing was raw, competitive, and deeply human. The close of its competitive life did not mark the end of the story. In fact, it marked the beginning of a new chapter, how the E30 M3 transitioned from contemporary champion to eternal icon, a legacy that still influences performance cars and collector markets to this day. The E30 M3's racing career may have closed, but its influence only deepened as it transitioned into the realm of legend. What had once been a homologation obligation was now a collector's prize and a benchmark for engineers shaping the future of performance cars. The stakes had shifted. This was no longer about beating Ford or Mercedes on the track, but about how a single car could define a brand, a philosophy, and a community of enthusiasts for generations. Micro story. In the 1990s, as newer, M3s arrived with six-cylinder engines and more comfort features. The original E30 stood apart as the purist's choice. Its lighter frame, simpler engineering, and raw feedback became qualities that enthusiasts began to cherish even more. At first, values remained modest, but those who held onto their cars soon realized they possessed something irreplaceable. The car's analog feel, its tight connection between driver and machine, and its championship pedigree set it apart from the wave of more complex, heavier performance cars that followed. Context digest. By the 2000s, collector markets began to notice the E30 M3. What had been a relatively affordable used car, was now commanding higher prices at auctions, especially for rare special editions. Enthusiasts in the US and Europe alike started seeking out clean examples, and scarcity drove demand. The once accessible icon was transforming into an investment-grade vehicle. Micro-story. Certain editions became legends within a legend. The Sport Evolution, with its larger displacement engine and adjustable aero, was seen as the pinnacle of factory-developed performance. The Secoto and Ravalia editions, named after championship drivers, added cultural resonance, connecting road cars directly to motorsport heroes. Each of these variants carried not just technical upgrades, but also symbolic weight, reminding buyers that the E30 M3 wasn't just a car, it was a living piece of racing history. Reflection bridge. What set the E30 M3 apart in its legacy years wasn't nostalgia alone, it was the authenticity of a machine built for a clear purpose, a trait that modern performance cars often struggle to replicate. Micro-story. As technology advanced, enthusiasts looked back at the E30 M3 as a high watermark of analog driving. There were no electronic aids, no drive modes, no artificial filters. You, the driver, were the only variable. This purity resonated especially in an era where digitalization was taking over, making the M3 feel timeless. Owners spoke of the joy in simply turning a steering wheel or working a gearbox that communicated with absolute clarity. Context Digest. Car culture in the United States also embraced the E30 M3. Import restrictions meant relatively few came across the Atlantic initially, but once they qualified for the 25-year rule, demand surged. American enthusiasts who had grown up reading about its European triumphs could finally own a piece of that history. As more cars landed on US soil, the E30 M3's presence at shows and track days became a tangible reminder of its myth. Micro-story. The rise of online communities in the 2010s amplified its cult following. Forums, videos, and social media created a network where stories of individual cars spread like folklore. One-off restorations, barn finds, and perfectly accurate preserved examples all became part of the narrative, fueling the sense that the E30 M3 wasn't just a machine, but a shared heritage. Each story, whether of a race-winning chassis or a daily-driven survivor, added texture to the collective memory. Reflection bridge. What had begun as a car built for compliance had grown into a cultural symbol, embodying both the spirit of motorsport and the joy of pure driving. Context Digest. By the 2020s, the E30 M3 was firmly established as a blue-chip collectible. Prices at auctions climbed past six figures for pristine examples, and even well-used cars commanded premiums. Yet beyond the numbers, its influence persisted in the design of modern M cars and countless imitators from other brands. Automakers continued to chase that elusive balance of lightness, precision, and everyday usability, the exact formula the E30 had perfected. Micro-story. Today, the E30 M3's presence extends far beyond garages and racetracks. It appears in video games, documentaries, and pop culture references, symbolizing an era when racing technology and road car accessibility met perfectly. Younger generations who never saw it race in period still aspire to drive one, proving that the legend has outlived its time. Its squared-off silhouette and high-revving heartbeat have become icons not of the 1980s, but of performance driving itself. The E30 M3's journey from homologation special to global icon closes a remarkable loop. It began as a rulebook requirement, became the winningest touring car in history, and now stands as one of the most beloved driver's cars ever created. Its legacy is not measured only in trophies or prices, but in the way it continues to inspire passion, debate, and admiration across generations of automotive enthusiasts. The journey of the 1987 BMW E30 M3 is a rare case where engineering, competition, and culture converged into something timeless. Born from the necessity of meeting Group A homologation rules, it could have been just another compliance car, quickly forgotten once the races ended. Instead, BMW took that obligation and crafted a masterpiece that not only dominated touring car racing, but also reshaped what enthusiasts expect from a driver's car. Its story is one of transformation. An everyday compact turned into a motorsport weapon, then into a living legend cherished across continents. Looking back, what made the E30 M3 so special wasn't just its specifications or its long list of wins. It was the clarity of its purpose. Every line on its body, every tweak to its suspension, every note from its high-revving four-cylinder was born from the desire to win fairly under the rules of the time. That authenticity gave it staying power. While other cars have come and gone with flashes of speed or marketing hype, the E30 M3 has endured because it represents something more fundamental: the perfect harmony between engineering intent and driver connection. Its legacy still resonates. Modern performance cars often lean on turbochargers, electronics, and ever-increasing horsepower, yet enthusiasts continue to revere the E30 for its simplicity and purity. It reminds us that greatness doesn't always mean excess. Sometimes it means precision, balance, and the courage to do things differently. That is why values have soared, why collectors chase special editions, and why young drivers still dream of piloting one decades after it first appeared. For BMW, the E30 M3 redefined the M badge, ensuring that every subsequent M3 would be judged against the standard it set. For motorsport, it proved that intelligence and balance could triumph over brute force. And for car culture at large, it became a touchstone, a car that bridges generations, admired as much by those who watched it race as by those discovering it through stories and screens today. So when we talk about the E30 M3, we're not just recounting the history of a single car. We're acknowledging a phenomenon that reached far beyond its era, a reminder of how rules meant to constrain innovation can sometimes spark brilliance. Instead, it is proof that legends are not born perfect. They are forged under pressure, honed in competition, and remembered for the way they made people feel behind the wheel. Thanks for riding with us on Cam and Crank. See you next time, automotive enthusiasts.